The major criminal gang prepares to turn state's evidence. Derek Nally's pitch for the presidency. Mary Benotti says all candidates are welcome. 3 towns and a city hold their breath for a £15 million bonanza. Good evening and welcome. At Stormont, consultations have been going on all day in an attempt to move the talks process into full-scale negotiations. The attempts centre on the wording of the motion formally launching the so-called three-stranded talks. Earlier it seemed that agreement was at hand, but in the last couple of hours objections were raised to a reference to the entire process being guided by the principle of consent. A plenary session of the talks is due to start about now.
Since late this afternoon, a series of deadlines for the long-awaited resumption of the plenary session of the talks have come and gone. Up until a few minutes ago, the SDLP and the other parties were still mulling over the wording of the crucial procedural motion which has to be tabled at the plenary session. One sticking point is a paragraph agreed by the Ulster Unionists and the 2 Loyalist parties which contains references to consent and decommissioning. At tea time, David Trimble was saying some progress had been made, but as darkness fell, the sense of optimism dimmed as well. Sinn Féin said they're keeping well out of the wrangling over the procedural motion, saying they're happy with the position they have already agreed with the 2 governments. It all means the lights inside the Stormont Talks building could be burning for some hours yet.
And our northern editor joins us now. David, what's the latest from Stormont?
And I can tell you that in the last few minutes it appears that the earlier objections to the wording of the agreed motion have been cleared. An Irish government source told me that he expected that a plenary session would be meeting around now as we speak, and that it would agree the motion which would move this process into full-scale negotiations after 16 months of delay. What may now happen is there's expected to be a joint statement from Tony Blair and from Bertie Ahern welcoming this move, and as we speak, John O'Donoghue, the Justice Minister, is representing the Irish government inside at this particular plenary. He'll then have to sign a document relating to the Verification Committee for Disarmament, and we should see a movement into the substantive three-stranded process when this motion is passed.
David, we'll go back to you if we have any further news. The Minister for Foreign Affairs, Ray Burke, met the US National Security Advisor Sandy Berger at the White House this evening. After the meeting, the White House announced the appointment of a new special advisor to President Clinton for economic initiatives in Ireland. Leading lawyer Jim Lyons will take over the post from former Senator George Mitchell.
The highlight of Ray Burke's visit to Washington was his meeting at the White House this evening. He spent half an hour with National Security Advisor Sandy Berger. Afterwards, he outlined areas where the United States can use its influence to push the peace process forward.
They can be helpful in encouraging the Unionist leadership, David Trimble and others, to remain focused as far as the talks are concerned, and to generally be supportive in a range of areas.
But the White House is also giving practical help. President Clinton has just appointed a new advisor for economic initiatives in Ireland. Jim Lyons currently serves as the American observer to the International Fund for Ireland. Now he'll be responsible for coordinating US efforts to help the peace process by economic means. Ray Burke also got more good news at the White House today. President Clinton has officially signed the order donating almost $20 million, about £13 million, to the International Fund for Ireland. From the White House, Ray Burke travels to New York, where he is due to address the United Nations General Assembly tomorrow night. Before leaving, he discussed preparations for the next big Irish event in Washington, Bertie Ahern's first visit to the White House as